Hey, Steven.
Hi.
We haven't updated in a while. Hi.
Hi, puppy. Can I help you?
Zoom. We're trying to do a thing. Hi. We're trying to do a thing here. Can we do a thing here? We're gonna do a thing here, okay?
I'll allow it, says Zoom.
Well, that's the problem. I don't think he's gonna. So, Steven.
What's up?
We haven't updated in a while.
This is a true statement.
Mostly because
If you're not a patron.
Mostly because animation is slow, even in the best of times.
Animation is indeed a slow process, and yet invariably I forget how slow of a process every single time. I've been tracking my progress decently this time though, so I made this graphic, which might be hard to read if you...
No, we got it.
Okay, oh yeah, so the yellow does actually show up pretty well. This was the first week in February, and then I just track how many shots I have and at what phase they are each week as we go through. And you can see I cut shot 15 at one point. But we're almost there. I only have 3 shots left to animate, and one of them is almost done. And I already finished 12. I had to re-export it because, well, I can show you. Oh, that's not shot 12 at all. That's shot 16. There we go. I had to put these little borders around the unsnip processes. Damn, unsnip processes was shot 16. Around the quill knobs on the ulna. Just so that people could see them, because it was really unclear.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, that was somewhat trivial to... I'm good at talking. But now I'm at the phase mostly where I'm going through and adding in all of the clips and all of the little pop-ups that show our citations. I probably don't keep my headphones on at the moment. Or if there's a correction that I have to give to my past self. Which is a much faster process now because I've got these fancy Mogurt files that Adobe started offering.
To say that's something that popped up during this episode.
Yeah.
So we've never used them before, but they are much more convenient.
Yeah, plus I can just, it'll let me, I can just twiddle a knob and it gives me the color I want.
Instead of having to render different colors.
Right, so like previously I would have to, in some cases I would render the entire timeline as just a video file and import that into After Effects, but for something this long I would break it into chunks and do it that way, and then export this entire thing again with the pop-ups and again with the pop-ups alpha channel, and then use Premiere's calculations effect to composite them together in Premiere. So this is faster.
So if you think Premiere is a lurching monster now...
Yeah, this is way better. Well, I mean, there was some interoperability with After Effects before, but this is so much smoother even than that.
Mm-hmm.
The reason that the 3 animations that are left is because they're complicated.
Mm-hmm.
There's one that I honestly probably should have cut at some point because there's no reason to have it animated, but I'm showing how Velociraptor could or could not grab things.
Mm-hmm.
And, okay, so this might be hard to tell what's going on because the layering isn't fixed yet, but it can grab things by clasping them against its opposite chest, but it can't grab things by scooping.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and the rainbow thing over here is not chromatic aberration, that's my fake onion skinning, because that's necessary when you're doing character animation in After Effects. I'm sure there's a plugin that gives you onion skinning, but I don't feel like buying one.
I try not to do plugins unless absolutely necessary anyway.
Yeah, I mean, there's some really good ones that I have no use for, at least for what we do.
The nature of plugins for the type of work we do is awesome for anything but this. So, to summarize, we're close.
We are close. Friggin', yeah. Not a lot left.
And then after that, we shoot the opening, like the new show opening with the new set.
Yeah.
And I shoot the actual opening of the episode, which they're about to see, and I should probably go start blogging that. Anything else you wanted to add before I disappear?
Thanks for sticking with us, if you are sticking with us. I know these are somewhat difficult times.
And now we're on the set, where I have turned it into a temporary workbench purely to get Bertrand some nicer digs.
We already have a lot of elements of it laid out. I've actually been doing quite a bit of work off camera, mostly because the work was done in a laser cutter or in software and there just wasn't a lot to see. It's actually really hard to get a good shot of our laser cutter cutting, so I just didn't bother. But what we have is a nicer looking set of wall panels for that nice rich wall look. What we were using before is actually floor samples, which were way too thick, and I had to angle the camera very specifically to hide the top thick part. And these just came from our local big box store, one of them at any rate. And I also took time to just draw out and cut out a window, because I just feel like that's something that should be there to help add to the room. And this will actually be the new bookcase, which it may actually be too large, but I feel like that won't matter, because either it'll be like kind of comical and therefore good enough anyway, or maybe a super rich dinosaur would just have a bookcase that big, who knows. So I think I'm gonna roll with it either way, especially since no matter how big or small it is, only a small portion would ever end up on screen at any one time anyway. So yeah, and we actually have the old bookcase still, which I also had laser cut and then painted, because you can see the books are part of the wood. Because at the time I knew that I had a particular shot with the books behind Bertrand in mind, so I just went with cutting and painting and got it done in an afternoon, instead of doing something like I plan to do, which is design a ton of very tiny books. But that'll probably be another day. Right now I'm just concerned with getting the actual set up and stable and positioning furniture. But yeah, that's where we were at, and you can already kind of see where we're going, and that it's a much more involved process, and we'll hopefully have a nicer looking and more ornate result. But yeah, and a lot of stuff is actually going to survive to go to the new set. Like, I had designed and laser cut these golden frames last time, which will survive, and have borrowed dollhouse furniture that there's no reason not to keep using. Unfortunately, we didn't have like a bookcase that looked this nice or anything like that, which is why I put so much effort into the bookcases. And then we have silly little things like this little felt doily, I think, that I used as a rug for the study. Unless I can find something that looks more like a rich guy's rug, we'll probably keep using that, and tables, stuff like that. And we'll probably reuse stuff like the dinosaur mounts that we had in one of the first shots and stuff like that. So it's going to be a bit of mixing and matching and stuff like that. And then we have new elements that are going in. Like, I found a cheap swatch of, I think it's like upholstery. Yeah, upholstery fabric, because it's way too thick to be regular. That will turn into curtains and stuff. So we just have a lot of things that are going to make for a much prettier set overall.
And all of this is just to have a set that is more structurally sound, looks way nicer and packs away better without being completely dismantled than the initial one that we designed with zero money for the channel trailer / Patreon pitch video. So what I'm gonna do is just jump into it. I have time-lapse cameras rolling all around me, so hopefully we'll catch most of the action, but when I think there's something that needs a little more explaining or that the cameras aren't going to catch well enough, I'll just stop and kind of talk about what I've done or what I'm doing as it happens. So let's dive right in. Okay, so we have the initial setup for the background, which is the highly advanced foam board with paper and wood. Unfortunately, the original paper that we had chosen for wallpaper got some water damage to it at some point, so we had to find something else, but I think we went with a pretty okay color. It's a greenish blue if the white balance on my camera would actually decide what it's doing. But it looks really nice with the wall trim we made, which is being held on by some magnetic tape that I found on Amazon one day. It's a pretty weak magnet, like it's this stuff. Like I'm pretty sure it's meant just to hang photos and stuff on the wall or a refrigerator or that, but it's doing the job so far, so we'll just see how long it manages to do so. It was a bit of trouble keeping things where they should be as I lined up the two foam boards at the corner there, but it worked out in the end. And we're keeping the same floor we had from the original set, which is just like a 80-cent piece of tile from a big box store. We went with this one because they didn't really have a good wood looking tile that also looked like a floor, and the closest thing I could find in like the dollhouse section of any craft stores was like $13, and I wasn't about to spend $13 just for a floor. So we went for something that looked like it could be in like an old library or something. So that's what we got for that. And we're holding the whole thing together with some duct tape, like the good metal kind. It's keeping things together pretty solidly. And yeah, this is already holding up much better than our last attempt, which was extra tiles with paper glued or taped to it and some bookends to try and keep them all upright. So yeah, yay, background. And next we'll start moving on to furniture and decoration and stuff.
So, as you could probably see as you were watching the time lapse just now, kind of forgot a step and taped the walls together before putting a hole where the window was gonna go. Because the entire point of the window is to be able to shine a light from outside the set into it for particular shots every now and then, more or less. So that was an ordeal. Luckily, box cutters exist, and you know, tracing in a careful hand has done well enough. I'll clean up some of these dirty edges in here a little bit, but it should otherwise be okay. Could always just cover it with a small piece of white diffusion paper too, but that was a bit of a thing. Still glad it came out. Just put wood stain on a bunch of these tiny little banister spindles meant for actual dollhouses, in the hopes that I can add it to some scrap pieces of wood and stuff that I have from failed cuts of the shelving for the bookcase, and turn them into things like tables and that, because the segment that we want to do with Bertrand's new set kind of requires quite a few. It's not really as dark as the plywood that we stained, but I probably should have expected that. I doubt that this is made, the banister spindles are made from particularly high quality wood, and I'm not even sure how porous it's actually capable of being now that I think about it, but it doesn't really matter too much because I don't think we'll be having too many shots that actually involve seeing the legs. This is more just a precaution just in case you happen to. So I have to wait at least an hour for the varnish to be dry. I got some of the fast dry stuff, and then I can start figuring out if I want to cut these at all or anything like that, as well as figuring out cutting out the final little pieces to help it look more like a three-dimensional table than just, you know, a plank with some sticks coming out the bottom. So they won't be super fancy or anything. They're not going to look like nice finished dollhouse furniture, but I think they'll get us where we need to be for now, because I just couldn't find any tables in a style that I wanted, and especially not for the price of shipping and stuff for it too. So we're just gonna give this a shot. The worst that happens is that it fails. It's not a big deal if it does. And yeah, moving on. What we have so far, which actually still doesn't look like much, in my opinion. Maybe it looks amazing to other people, but it's a good start. It was a couple hours work over like the last couple days, between each day, and I learned some important lessons along the way. Like, if you're gonna make tiny curtains, don't be stupid and buy upholstery fabric because it's super thick and hard to work with for what you want to do. And it doesn't matter if it's both cheap and looks pretty, because it's just going to take forever and it's not worth the low price and the amount of time we just wasted because we're also stubborn. But we have curtains, which I'll probably still keep messing with just to properly cover the window frame on the edge and stuff. Basically, I didn't want to give up on the stupid fabric because, dang it, I wanted to make it work. But this is what we've got so far, and it's going to keep changing. And I actually found Bertrand a new hat. It came off, I think, a Charles Dickens action figure someone gave me for Christmas once. So yeah, he's got a snazzy new hat, and I'm thinking I might try to make something sport coat-like to go with it. Or just some kind of more, not casual, what am I thinking? A nicer jacket in general. The challenge being that it's very hard to fit him for anything because he has spikes coming out of his back. Because at least the crest, you can kind of measure for his head by just making sure it fits that. But we'll see. What I'm hoping to get to next is to make all that tiny furniture I mentioned earlier in the video, as well as starting on making all of the little decorative props that are going to go throughout it. So there's going to be stuff like books, scrolls, artifacts, things like that. And the entire little like 12 by 12 inch square that makes up the floor is just going to be crammed with all of that kind of stuff to exude hopefully a feeling of a well-used and well-loved study, because Bertrand's just that kind of guy. But for now, it's been 2 days of just getting the general structure set up, and it's late at night, so I think what we can do now is check on Steven's progress of the last couple days and wrap up from there. Hey.
Hi.
What you doing?
Right now I'm transcoding some QuickTime movies to MP4s so that Premiere doesn't eat itself trying to load them. And then I'm going to plug them in. And once those are plugged in, I'll only have one more animated clip to make.
Yay.
So moving right along.
Yay.
And since we last spoke, I made it up to the 24th clip out of 30.
I like that you made it sound like that we don't talk to each other in between.
Oh, I meant
shots.
Me and the audience. Because it's been, what, 2 days? And this is the first time Miss Elizabeth and I have spoken.
It's been 2 days since our last correspondence.
How is young Zoom? I hope to send supplies by the next ferry boat.
So you've made a lot of progress in 2 days, essentially.
Relatively speaking, yeah.
Or at least what seems like a lot.
I don't remember exactly where I was on the timeline last time, but I'm like a little over 3/4 of the way done.
Yeah.
Except for having to I have to go back through and add pop-ups that have their own images attached.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have to make a special Mogurt just for this episode that'll have all the images it needs. But other than that, we're almost in business.
Yay. The set's like halfway there. I have to make a bunch of tiny tables.
Amazing.
And then a bunch of tiny books. You want to help make tiny books?
I don't know if that's the best use of my time at this junction, but I kind of do want to help make some tiny books.
I'll save some tiny books for you.
Okay.
Anything else you want to add?
Not really.
Right.
Good meeting.
Say goodbye, Steven.
Goodbye, Steven.